Hey, so I've been talking about how you can make sure to kind of get super calibrated with your boss or whoever your key stakeholder is before you build a high stakes presentation, so you don't have to spend like all of those different cycles of revisions, right? Revision one, revision two, I call it iteration purgatory. And the big takeaway is that you need to align with whoever's having you kind of build the deck or that high stakes presentation before you start building, right? It's heartbreaking when you actually, your boss asks you to go build a deck. You might be going for, you know, couple $1 million, $10 million. I've even worked on some things where you're going for $100 or more $1 million, and you spend all this time building a deck, and you go back to your boss who has to kind of take it to the folks that are going to be able to write the check. And they tell you, no, this is not what I need. It's got to be more simplified, or it's got to be clearer, or whatever it happens to be. So that brings us to the pyramid principle, something that will really help you kind of get super aligned on what you're building. And not only that, it's great for like doing an elevator speech. It's really good for kind of just organizing your thoughts. So I'm going to tell you how the pyramid principle works, and then I'm going to give you a template that we use to kind of organize this stuff in advance. So let me just share real quick here. Let's see. Share my screen. Okay. So let's get into it. Let's go to the pyramid principle first. So the pyramid principle. So basically, all this is, and I'm going to kind of zoom up on the top, is the pyramid principle. If you read the post about this, it's really about starting with your conclusion, right? You're pitching for something. You, at the end of the day, you have a hypothesis that X is true. This is where you want people to kind of end up. And what you don't want to do is wait until you get to all of your rationale, and at the very end, you're like, and this is what I'm really asking for. What you've got to do is actually start at the beginning. In the military, they call this bluff, bottom line up front. So I'm going to use the example of what I'm talking to you right now as sort of the use case for showing you the pyramid principle. So I'm saying my conclusion is use the pyramid principle for better high stakes proposal planning, right? I'm pitching to you this idea. This is what I want you to do. Now, why? Why should you do that? So I started with my conclusion, and now I'm going to go into the things that really make up the pyramid. Well, one, if you do it this way, it will capture and hold attention because you've said what your conclusion is, and then you're telling people, I'm going to show you how I got there. Two, it ensures coherence and consistency. A lot of times what we see when we're helping people, build a high stakes presentation is that they've got a bunch of extra stuff in there that just, those are like rabbit holes. They're like off ramps to your deck. But if you build in a pyramid style, it's going to keep you on point. And then three, it facilitates quicker decision making because it's easy to understand. People have followed all of your logic. I have like this, whatchamacallit of doom going here. So let's see if I'm able to get past it. Okay, I did. Yikes. So what you can do then after you've got, and here's what you see the pyramid, right? You use the pyramid principle for better high stakes proposal planning. That's my conclusion. I've got my 3 support points. And as you see, they sort of form a pyramid. Now, you may actually want to add additional support points. So when we go down here, what I can see is, now, how can I prove to you or make you believe that by starting with your conclusion at the beginning, you can capture and hold attention? Well, I can do that with a proof point that has a bunch of brain science that shows that when you start with the beginning, you basically open a loop. People are waiting for you to fill in that gap and close the loop, and so you can keep going. I could actually start giving you examples of proposals that we've helped companies develop that use this structure and are able to go and actually get the funding that they need. And I could maybe have a testimonial from a client or something, but you can keep going down and building proof points. But every time you have a point, you can see that it starts to form a triangle. Now, this is really important. You have to have at least 3 support points. 3 support points are kind of like the legs of a stool. If you only have 2, the stool is going to fall over. If you have 3, you know that that stool is stable and that it will hold. So I would say a minimum of 3, and you generally do not want to go more than 7 unless you've got something super, super complex. All right, so just a little note. Okay, now how to use the thinking behind this sort of pyramid principle thinking to plan for that deck. And I'm going to use this same example in a slightly different way. All right, before you come up with the conclusion, which what we came up with was that you should use the pyramid principle to plan your presentation. We first had to figure out, like, how do we get to that conclusion? And the way we do that is we have to ask ourselves what's going on and what's the complication to resolve. God, there's that thing again. I got to figure out what's happening there. Anyway, so when we come here, and of course it's not going to click, it did. How do we get to what our conclusion is, possibly before we even know what the conclusion is? Well, we use this worksheet. We say, what's the situation? Well, the situation, might be that in order to get funding in many businesses, you have to develop a PowerPoint or some sort of slide deck that can be travel up, the ladder of all the powers that be, that so someone can finally give you the money. And the complication that we're trying to resolve right now is that a lot of times, so much time goes into building these decks, and then you take it to the person who's going to, carry it forward, and they're like, I can't use this. It's too complicated. It's too long. It's too confusing, whatever that happens to be. How do we resolve that complication? Use the pyramid principle. So this little thing over here is how we get to what that top point in the pyramid is going to be. And then we simply go on to continue to do our support points. Now, the beauty of this template specifically is we fill this out when we're using it with clients, or if we're using it internally, in advance before we start building it all. So we can use this as sort of a calibration document. And so what you can do is use this document. I'll show you how to get access to this in this post. Is you can use this to kind of plan your conversation. And it's also, by the way, it's great for having just even planning a conversation where you have a point of view with your boss. You're trying to get them to make a decision on something. It's great for building an elevator speech. It's got a bunch of little ways that you can hack it. The more you know about it. I did want to show you, this all comes from Barbara Minto, who was a consultant at McKinsey back in the day, actually developed this this methodology of building out all of their reports and proposals that they still use to today, as far as I'm aware. So it's a really powerful tool. So you can use this to plan things before you do your next high stakes presentation, or the next time you ask your boss for something, or the next time you ask you're going for investment funding, or whatever it happens to be. And I hope you find it useful.